100 degrees. The kind of heat that makes the air taste like copper. The kind that accelerates decay. It is June 27th, 1876. A column of soldiers is riding into a valley they don't know is a crime scene yet. General Terry and General Gibbon have been marching for days. The mission was straightforward. Custer locates the enemy. Terry and Gibbon close the trap. Custer was supposed to be waiting. He was supposed to have won. The scouts ride ahead. They crest the final ridge and look down into the valley. And they freeze. From this distance, the hillside is covered in white shapes. Hundreds of them. Scattered across the grass like stones. Like driftwood. Like sheep. That's what your brain tells you at first. A herd of white sheep lying in the sun. But sheep don't have limbs splayed out at wrong angles. Sheep don't cluster in tight groups of fear, then stretch alone for 50 yards. And sheep don't smell like that. The smell hits the column before the truth does. A thick, sweet, rotting wall of it that stops horses mid-stride. Soldiers gag. One account says a trooper vomited before he even understood what he was seeing. Then they see it clearly. Not sheep, bodies. Naked, bloated. Stripped of every boot, every button, every scrap of dignity. The skin has gone white and tight in the heat, swollen like balloons left in the sun, hundreds of them, and the silence. That's what breaks the soldiers. Not the bodies, not the smell. It's the quiet. No birds, no insects at first, just a low, vibrating hum that builds until you realize what it is. Flies. Millions of them. Every man on this ridge expected to find Custer celebrating a victory. Instead, they walked into a massacre. When the soldiers began moving through the dead, they weren't just burying comrades. They were reading a crime scene. And what the bodies told them, what forensic evidence would later confirm, painted a picture far darker than any battlefield painting. First, the myth of the last bullet. Every soldier knew the unwritten rule. Save the final round, not for the enemy, for yourself. Because capture meant torture. It meant a death so slow it didn't have a name. Forensic analysis suggests some followed through. Bodies showed contact-wound evidence, gunshot injuries consistent with self-infliction, powder burns on skin already stripped of everything else. They chose their own ending over what was coming. Now the mutilations. History books call it savage brutality, but forensic anthropologists tell a different story. To the Lakota and Cheyenne, the body was a vessel. The way the spirit departed determined what came next. Scalping was a severance. The slashing of thighs documented on dozens of remains was meant to release the spirit from the flesh. And the piercing of eardrums. Sharp objects driven clean through the ears of the dead, not to cause pain. The ears were opened so the spirit could hear the path to the afterlife. It wasn't cruelty for the sake of cruelty. It was ritual. But among all the dead, one body became the focal point. Tom Custer, George's brother. A man who had earned 2 Medal of Honor awards, the only person in American history to do so. Forensic examination of his remains told a brutal story. His body was among the most heavily mutilated on the field. His face was destroyed beyond recognition. His chest was opened. The only way they confirmed it was Tom Custer was a tattoo on his forearm, a decorated hero, reduced to an ink mark on dead skin. That is what this battlefield actually produced. Now we get to the anomaly. George Armstrong Custer, the man at the center of this entire event, is found in a condition that defies logic. He is clean, relatively speaking. No scalping, no slashed thighs, no pierced ears. Compared to the mangled bodies surrounding him, he looks almost peaceful. Forensic evidence suggests something happened to this man that the rest of the dead did not experience. The autopsy, crude by modern standards, but documented, found 2 gunshot wounds, one to the temple, one to the chest. One bullet ends a life. So, why are there two? The suicide theory. Powder burn analysis suggested at least one wound was consistent with close contact. The temple shot carries the hallmarks of self-infliction. If Custer pulled that trigger, the chest wound becomes the cover story. Someone else fired it. Or the Army said someone else fired it, because the alternative was unacceptable. Heroes don't kill themselves. Not in 1876. Not in America. The Army needed Custer to be a martyr. Forensic evidence suggests the truth. The Army chose the myth. But there's a third interpretation, and this one is the coldest. What if Custer wasn't spared out of respect? To mutilate a body was to acknowledge it, to engage with its spirit. What if, to the warriors who fought him, George Armstrong Custer wasn't a worthy enemy? What if being left untouched wasn't mercy? It was an insult. One thing is alive, a horse, standing motionless among the bodies, head hanging low, covered in blood, most of it not his own. His name is Comanche. He belonged to a captain who died on this field. He is the only living creature the relief column finds. The Army kept him for the rest of his life. Never ridden again, never worked. He lived 17 more years as a living monument to the dead, a breathing thing that saw everything and could never say a word. Fast forward to the 1980s. Archaeologists returned to Little Bighorn with metal detectors, radar, and a question the Army never wanted answered. What actually happened here? Ballistics analysis of recovered shell casings rewrote the history books. The Last Stand, the image of Custer and his men making a heroic defensive stand on a hilltop, is a myth. The shell casings tell the truth. They don't cluster on hilltops in defensive formations. They form a trail, a broken, chaotic V-shape moving away from the ridge and down into the valley. Forensic evidence suggests the 7th Cavalry did not stand and fight. They ran. The maps call it the South Skirmish Line. The ballistics call it a slaughter. A corridor of flight where men fired blindly over their shoulders as they sprinted downhill. The body positions confirm it. The dead are scattered along the exact path the casings trace. A trail of men running for their lives, dropping one by one. The entire battle from first contact to the last man standing lasted approximately 20 minutes. 20 minutes of panic. 20 minutes of screaming, running, and dying. Not glory. Not sacrifice. Terror. The soldiers tasked with burying the dead had no shovels, no equipment, no plan. So they dug with what they had. Spoons, tin cups, canteens, their bare hands in the baked Montana dirt. The graves were 18 inches deep, 18 inches, less than the length of your arm. Within weeks, wolves and badgers tore through the soil and pulled the remains to the surface. Within months, the battlefield was littered with exposed bones, skulls, and in documented accounts, boots with feet still inside them, scattered in the grass like trash. Years later, the Army returned. They reburied the dead. They built monuments. They painted portraits that turned 20 minutes of chaos into a masterpiece of heroism. They called it Custer's Last Stand. But if you strip away the monument, and the painting, and the myth, if you walk into that valley on June 27th, 1876, and you look at what the soldiers actually found, you don't find glory. You find bones in the grass, and the silence of a field where no one stood at all.